Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. So today I have a very interesting duel for you. What you're about to witness are two really not very known decks and showing their full potential. I won't tell you how this duel ends out, but I will kind of elaborate a little bit about the both decks being played. If you have been on this channel and have been seeing a few of my duels by now, then you already know about this P.U.N.K Tistina deck that I've been playing for the past months or so. However, you're probably not familiar with this deck my opponent is playing. Essentially, this is a 60 card reptile pile. I guess I can call it that. It plays the Evolzar cards, it plays Miscellaneousaurus, it plays the Evolzar engine. The reason the Evolzar engine is in here in this deck is because of this monster right here, which is the Mega Chileria. They can also summon Jet Synchron in this deck, and this is a new card from AGOV Overlord, the Ogdoadic Daybreak. You will essentially see another new card very soon as well. And yeah, this is I won't explain everything that he's doing. I will just explain the end board after he just ends up doing it. But essentially, this is a very meshed combo pile involving a lot of reptile cards, and the end goal of this deck is to just summon a plethora of different alien monsters. And those alien monsters are going to play a very significant role later on. Take note that these alien monsters are not generic, but they need reptile monsters to be summoned. And all of these monsters right here that were used as material were reptile monsters. Now, essentially, he summons the Dark Witch by sending the Mechaleria. And the Dark Witch is going to set the Sinful Spoils. And then he'll activate the Sinful Spoils, summon Jet Synchron. Essentially, the reason he's doing that is just so he can have follow-up for next turn. And this is the win condition right here. Basically, what's gonna happen now is this card is going to tribute his Shock Trooper, and for 3 whole turns, every monster that I summon will receive an A counter. And you're probably thinking A counters are not a really big deal, that doesn't really do anything. Take note that this also blows up every monster I control as well. So this is essentially like a board wipe trap as well. But the reason this card is a really big deal is because of this monster right here. So this is Cosmic Slicer Zero. Basically, what this card will do is that everything that has an A counter is switched to defense position, and neither player can activate the effects of whatever has the A counter. This is essentially a soft lock between these two cards, and this soft lock is kind of very strong because not a lot of decks can actually handle this. Essentially, this might end the turn for just a very few specific decks if you don't have an imperm or stuff that it can just stop this card on its track. This also this effect affects both players and doesn't affect monsters in general. So even stuff like Expertly Noir cannot bypass this effect. Chaos Angel is not safe from this either. So yeah, this is really a very tough lock. You already know my deck. This is the Tistina deck that I've been piloting. So adding to what he just did with the aliens, he flipped Evil Singularity. Some people are probably not familiar with this card. This card is very old. It's almost like a decade old already. This card essentially came out, I think it was in Crimson Crisis, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was on 2014. But essentially what this card does is you can grab an Evil Tile and an Evolzar, both categories, and it can XYZ summon into an Evolzar monster. The monster that tutors this card is this card right here, the Evolzar Laios. This card is probably a little bit more familiar. This card came out in Duelist Nexus. And essentially, this card can tutor that card, and this card can also set up the rest of it to make this card viable. Evolzar Lures is another card that came out in Duelist Nexus. Essentially, it cannot be targeted by monsters, and once per turn, well, actually it's not once per turn, it's once per detach. As a quick effect, it can respond to any card that I activate on the field, and since it has all reptiles and dinosaurs and materials, as intended because of this trap, it can do it as many times as it has material. So basically this is a soft Omni Negate lock and a soft monster lock. I do have one way to play around all of that, and that is with the demigod of the Tistina. However, he does have Ash Blossom, and that's going to stop that. For those who are wondering why can the demigod of the Testina play a role here, is because both adding a card and summoning itself are all one effect, and this effect comes from the hand. It does not come from the field, so it's not frozen by the scissor roll, and it cannot be stopped by Lars. However, he does have Ash Blossom, and like that's just going to be very, very unfortunate. Yep, he activates the Ash Blossom right there. I summon the Tinta de Tistina. I draw. So now he activates the Ogdoadic Daybreak. So basically he can banish this card from the graveyard and target one of the like banished reptiles. It could be any reptile, but he's going to target the Naoya. It puts it back into the deck, and then it foolishes for another reptile. So the reason I'm showing you this is because now we see another new card from Age of Overlord that he sent to the graveyard, and this is called Nephilabis, the Ogdoadic Overlord. Essentially what this card does is, if any monster is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card. However, you are locked into reptile monsters after you summon this card. So, not the reptile element players, this card is not abusable in that deck. If this card that was special summoned is on the field, you can target one monster in your graveyard and just special summon it. But yeah, basically this is a double extender. It can summon itself after the Lily resolves. So let's count the number of reptiles. 1, 2, only 2 at the moment. Actually 3 because of the chalk frame. So essentially what the Lily does, because I'm pretty sure not many people know what Ogdoadic cards do, this is essentially a Foolish Burial for reptiles. But if he has 5 or more reptiles in the graveyard, he can special summon 1 from the graveyard. But essentially what's going to happen is this will dump any reptile, the Nephilabis will special summon itself, and then the Nephilabis can just summon another card. However, he is locked into reptiles, so the only other monster he can summon is the Carouse. But yeah, this is basically like it, and I just scoop it up. Like I really don't find a real reason to like play out that game. That is already a lost cause. Now I go first. He has no hand traps. This basically means that I can full combo. If anybody who has seen this channel in the past already knows by now, this knows that this combo is pretty much like a +6 if it resolves. Like way too many pluses. Essentially I do the full combo. Anytime my opponent like pretty much tells me there are no hand traps, I'm just gonna go all in when it comes to this deck. Otherwise, if you want to be cautious, what you end up doing is you essentially end the board right here and don't summon the demigod. You try to end the main phase, and if your opponent Nibiru's, then you go demigod. That way you still have a couple of interruptions, but you still have all of your Tistina cards into rotation for the next turn if they have chance that you want to play around the Nibiru. I know that people are going to ask me how do you play around Nibiru with this deck, and this is essentially the way you do it. If you don't want to play around Nibiru, you just do exactly what I'm doing right now, and you're going to end on both sides of the combo. And there are probably people who are still not familiar with this deck, so I will explain all the interruptions here. Essentially, the interruptions that we have right now are as follows. We have the Chirakusai that could synchro away the Dragon Drive into Amazing Dragon, and that essentially becomes a bounce for 4 cards. 5 if you count the tracker. I think it counts every level 3 Psychic. So eventually it's a bounce for 5. We have the full armored XYZ. We have the Dangerous Gabo, which is essentially an Imperm. We have Play of the Tistina. The Play of the Tistina is going to summon the Crystal God, and that will make it so the Demigod has the Daruma Cannon effect, and just set all my opponent's monsters. So that's 2 interruptions. We have full armored XYZ, which will XYZ summon using these 2 Tistinas, and that will summon the Tistina God. So that's 3. You have the Dangerous Gabu, which is essentially an Imperm. That's 4. You have the Discordance of the Tistina that can banish everything in the graveyard. That's 5. And you have the full armor Dark Lancer, which will trigger its effect to attach a monster if I equip something to any XYZ, which we can when the full armor XYZ goes to the graveyard, because each effect is not once per turn for each effect. For one effect, rather. But yeah. So let's see how we play it out. He tries to activate Wakauchi. I let it go through. He also activates the Gaia Booster. I also let that go through. The Gaia Booster is summoned. And that's when I flip the play of the Tistina and just set both his monsters. The reason I do this is because he has less bodies on the board at this moment. And if we remember from the last game, he basically spawned a lot of tokens onto the board. And I just making it so he has as little room to extend with his possible plays as possible. And that's the reason I did that interruption, like, specifically. If he tries to commit with the Diabellstar engine, I still have like a plethora of other interruptions that I can do outright, that essentially in a way of my choosing. So he summons the Dark Witch, he sends one of the set monk cards, because he can actually do that. I flip the Dangerous Gabu. I pretty much just put him on just better have the like the Snake Eye. If he does have the Snake Eye spell, I can actually try to play around it as well. But yeah, essentially I just flip that. He goes into the battle phase. In the battle phase, he tries to attack the Chirakusai. I do the Chirakusai effect. And take note that I can actually do this on any moment in the turn, not just the main phase. So essentially, I just go into Amazing Dragon. Amazing Dragon is going to bounce the Dark Witch. And sadly, he did leave the game. But here I'm showing you the rest of the interruptions and how it would have been played out. But yeah, even though this duel essentially just ended on sort of a draw, which is very unfortunate, I still wanted to showcase you this duel because this is a very, very, very interesting match. Like, these are 2 decks that you're probably not going to see see at a YCS or see at like a regionals or a major competitive level. But it is very, very fun to see, and I just wanted to show you, like, Age of Overlord really did a lot, not just for the like newer decks or the more popular decks, rather. Like, that set really was a game changer even for rogue decks. And I think it's kind of important for you to learn and see about these new like decks as we go along, because you will essentially just be in a position where you just see somebody activate all these reptile cards or activate all these Tistina cards, and you go essentially like mind broke and just don't know how to interact properly, and just end up like losing the duel because you were not familiar with the other archetypes. I feel like like something that really makes a good player is not just knowing how to play your deck or knowing how to interact with your opponent, but having as much possible knowledge of all different decks that exist in the game, because Yu-Gi-Oh is a game where there's almost infinite possibilities. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you found this duel entertaining. I hope you found this duel to your liking and understanding. More dueling book adventures coming soon. Keep practicing and keep dueling.